everyone, Miss Carrie here from Miss Carrie's Creations. This past week, our creative design team has been making some beautiful Easter projects for you. I hope you have enjoyed them so far. Today, I have a home decor piece you can create using your Cricut. I have broken this video down into segments. You can click on any of those sections in the description below. Today, I'm going to be using the Close to My Heart Daisy Meadows paper pack. There is an optional sticker sheet that you can purchase with this paper pack. I will only be using these paper patterns today. As you can see, they have some beautiful colors and designs that are perfect for Easter. And I'm going to be using a couple of these to cut out my images on my Easter Egg Cloche. You are also going to need a cloche. I have also heard it called cloche, so if you know the correct pronunciation, let me know. I would also like to know how many of you know the original reason these were created. Now, I found two of them at Michael's craft store, a large one and a smaller one. Both of these have metal bases. I am going to be using the smaller cloche today. So if you end up deciding to use the larger one, you will just need to upscale all the images we create in Design Space. Let's go ahead and start creating our project. Today, we are going to quickly create the project in Cricut Design Space. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because you will probably make changes and personalize it to fit your own Easter egg creation. I do want to show you a couple of features like color sync today. That is something we are going to focus on as we create our project. I'm going to start out by inserting a template to help me design the images to fit my cloche. I'm going to insert a basic canvas template. I can change the size, the shape, and the color of any of my templates. I'm going to choose a custom size so that I can match this template to the area inside my cloche. The width of the base of my cloche is about 5.5 inches, and the height is about 7 inches, but I'm going to go ahead and change it to 6.5, and then I'm going to change my template color to gray so that I'm able to see it. Now, templates are temporary. They are simply a visual representation of what you are creating. So this is not going to cut out with my project. It's just going to help me in designing it. I'm going to grab some images from the Close to My Heart Daisy Meadows collection. So I'm going to go to my image sets and I'm going to search for Daisy Meadows. Once I have opened up that collection, I'm going to go ahead and grab some images to start designing my home decor piece. Now, this collection is only available through the affiliate link below. So if you would like to use these images, go ahead and click on that link so that you can purchase this collection. It is not available in Access. I've grabbed a little egg and a flower. I am also going to be grabbing the scrapbook page because it has a border and a flower on it that I would like to use on this creation. And I'm going to go ahead and use these leaves here at the top. Now I'm going to insert these images into my canvas, and I'm going to delete the images that I don't plan on using in my project. So I'm just clicking on the images over in the Layers panel on the left. I'm clicking Delete, and all I will have left is the little yellow flower and the border from that scrapbook page. This border is going to be wrapped around the outside of the cloche. So you are going to need to measure your glass piece to figure out how big you need it to be. Remember, it cannot be larger than 11.5 inches. I'm going to create two of these that are 10 inches each. They fit within that 11.5 inch requirement, and I can overlap them on the glass piece on my little cloche. Now I'm going to be using that template I created to resize the egg. I've drug the egg over on top of the template and I'm going to resize it to 4 inches. Now this to me looks a little bit too big to be able to fit flowers around the base, so I'm going to make it a little bit smaller at 3.5 inches, which ends up being a little bit too small for me, so I ended up going right there in the middle and doing 3.75, which was the perfect height for this egg. I need 4 of these eggs, so I'm going to duplicate it 3 times, and then I'm going to start resizing those flowers. Once again, I'm going to be using that template I created to help me resize these flowers. Using a template is not necessary, but it is a great way to be able to visualize the size and scale of your project. By creating that template that matched the area inside my cloche, I am able to scale these images so that they are going to fit inside that glass dome. All right, now that I have all of my images duplicated and resized, we're going to take a look at Color Sync. Color Sync is located in the Layers panel. It's one of the tabs that you can select. I'm going to show you two ways that I use this Color Sync feature. One of the ways I like to use Color Sync is to play around to determine which colors might look better on my project. Right now, I'm dragging those leaves down to the cinnamon color to match the flowers. And I decided, you know what? I don't like those leaves in cinnamon. I actually liked them better in peacock. So all I have to do is click undo and they'll go back to peacock. But that allowed me to just visually see if the cinnamon color was a better choice. The other way that I like to use Color Sync is just a speed method of changing the colors of the materials. These leaves are going to be cut out of a patterned paper of peacock, so I want them to be a shade darker than the cardstock eggs. I just need to change one of the leaf colors, and then I can go ahead and drag down those other leaves to the darker peacock color. This is a really quick way to change the material color on your images without having to go up to that ink blot in the edit bar. Another way to quickly change the colors on an object is to drag the entire row down to a color. So this border is a pink color. It's actually going to match the craft color of the leaves. Instead of dragging down each individual border piece, I just have to click on that pink bar to the left of the border pieces and drag it down to the toffee colored leaves. And now both border pieces are going to be cut out of the same material as the leaves. So those are a couple of different ways that I like to use the Color Sync feature when I'm creating my project. We're going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to go ahead and place all of the materials through my Cricut Maker, and we're going to start assembling the Easter Egg Cloche. So here are all of the pieces cut out and ready to go. We're going to assemble each one of these individually, starting with the eggs. There are 4 eggs total. When you take a look at the background piece, it is a mint color against a peacock. To me, this was a little bit too plain, so I've decided to add some stenciled images on those mint eggs. I've grabbed my white Daisy pigment ink, and I'm going to be using the polka dot stencil on our 12 by 12 stencil sheet. Our white Daisy ink is a pigment ink, and it's going to stick to this stencil. I discovered that dish soap does a really good job of washing pigment ink off of that acetate. The white Daisy ink is going to give a chalk-like look to the polka dots on this egg. After I added the little polka dots on the lighter side of the mint cardstock, I took a look at it and it still wasn't showing up as well as I hoped behind the openings in the peacock egg. So I've decided to heat emboss the polka dots. I'm going to sprinkle some white embossing powder on that pigment ink, and then I'm going to heat it with my heat tool. This will make those dots stand out quite a bit more, and it'll also give it a nice little bit of texture and dimension on my home decor piece. Once the embossing powder has been set, we're going to take a look at it behind that peacock egg, and those polka dots stand out perfectly. I love how these 2 layers look together, and they're going to look even more amazing once they're inked. I'm going to repeat the process of inking, stenciling, and heat embossing these 3 mint eggs before we start assembling them for our project. Each one of these cardstock eggs are going to be folded in half. So we want to make sure we have plenty of adhesive to hold the 2 layers together so that it doesn't come apart when we start to fold and assemble it into our 3-dimensional piece. I'm just using some Tombow mono adhesive here, and I'm filling in all of the little crevices as much as I can. And then I'm going to use my brayer to make sure that all of that glue is squeegeed in between the two layers, and I have a nice even seal to prevent them from coming apart once it's folded. I'm going to repeat the process with the 3 remaining eggs. Again, just really be sure that you are adding plenty of adhesive between those 2 layers. You do not want these eggs popping apart once we start assembling them into that 3-dimensional home decor piece. Before we add that pearl paper frame, I'm going to add some shading to these eggs using some peacock ink and my blender tool. That white frame has been cut out of our pearl paper, and I want it to really stand out around the egg. I also want to add some dimension to make this egg really pop, since it's the focal point of our home decor piece. So I've decided to add dimension with ink. This is really easy to do with our blender tools. So if you take a look at my work surface there, you're going to see a tiny bag that says peacock. Each one of my little foam pieces for my blender tool go right in those little baggies, and they are labeled by color. And then they all go onto a binder ring and they hang up in my craft space. This makes it really easy to just grab the colors that I'm going to need for each one of my projects. Now we're going to add those little frames around the eggs. Like I said, this has been cut out of our pearl paper. You could cut it out of glitter paper or cardstock, or even vellum would look really pretty. Again, we want to make sure that this is adhered really well to the front of the egg. This is going to be the piece that pops off if you don't use a good adhesive. Again, I'm using my brayer to just make sure that that glue is squished between all of the layers, and then I'm going to repeat the process with the remaining 3 eggs. I've gone and skipped ahead in the video. If you need to hit pause so you can finish adhering all the pieces of your eggs together, go ahead and do that. After you've adhered all your layers together, go ahead and set these aside for about an hour just to make sure that adhesive is all set up. As you can see in the lower corner of my Versamat, I've placed a couple of stamping blocks on my eggs just to make sure that all of those layers adhere together well. Now we are going to start assembling our flowers. These have been cut out of white daisy cardstock, ballerina glitter paper, and that Daisy Meadows canary check paper. You can assemble these flowers any way that you like. Since this is a home decor piece, I am going to be using some 3D foam tape because I want these flowers to be kind of bulky and bold around the base of that egg. Now, these flowers were a little bit of a struggle. You have to really make sure that you match up those petal shapes, and a couple of them look really similar. So you're going to watch me kind of turn these flowers around as I'm trying to get them matched up with the base. Before I add the top layer on these flowers, I want to add a little bit of ink around the petals. Again, this is to add some dimension and just a little bit of additional color on the petals. I'm using my blender tool with some canary ink. Later on, I also add some toffee ink to the petals because I add toffee to all of the other Cricut cuts that I'm adding to this home decor piece. I'm adhering the top layer of this flower onto the glitter paper using this monoliquid adhesive. You might have a favorite adhesive that you like to use for adhering items to glitter. This one has always worked really well for me. I am really liking the way these flowers look with the combination of the glitter paper, the white daisy, and that cute yellow check. To add just a little bit more dimension to this flower, I'm going to go ahead and adhere some beads in the center. You are more than welcome to go ahead and skip this part if you wish. When I create home decor pieces for my own home, I like to add as much detail as possible. And these little beads in the center look just like all of the little seeds and stamens in the center of a flower. It's hard to see these up close because they are white beads, but they do add a nice little whimsical element to the center of the flower. The larger flower is pretty simple to create. I have cut the layers out of white daisy cardstock, ballerina cardstock, that plaid Daisy Meadows paper, and some ballerina glitter paper. Again, I'm going to use some 3D foam tape in between some of the layers. Originally, I used ballerina ink on the petals of these flowers, but it didn't create the look that I was wanting. It didn't make those petals stand out very well. So I went and grabbed the toffee ink instead, and I end up using this toffee ink on all of the elements of this home decor piece. I went back and re-inked those canary plaid flowers. I added toffee ink on those petals, and while I have the ink out, I've decided to add ink onto the edges of those craft leaves. Using the toffee ink is going to give these images kind of an old world look and match the galvanized base of that cloche that I've chosen. Before I adhere the rest of the layers together, I'm going to fold up the petals on each of the top layers of the flower. The ballerina petals are going to be adhered to that white daisy layer using some liquid adhesive. I'm also going to fold up the petals on the plaid flowers and adhere them onto the ballerina cardstock using some foam tape, and I'm going to rotate them just slightly. If you take a look at both the ballerina and the white daisy cardstock petals, they are rotated just a little bit so that the other layers show through. This is not how they were originally designed, but for my home decor piece, it gives it just that much more dimension when I go to add all of those layers around the base of the egg. On the yellow flowers, I added beads in the center. On these flowers, I'm adding an additional element, stamens. There are some flower Cricut cuts that are available on Flower Market where you can cut these from, or you can use our 3D flower die and cut some stamens out for yourself. These were cut from ballerina cardstock, and then I rolled them up, adhered the ends, and now I'm gluing them onto the center of the flowers. Now, with any other project, I would not have done this, but since this is a home decor piece, I want as much volume as possible on these 3D flowers. All right, give yourself a pat on the back. You are done assembling all of the elements for this Easter egg cloche. Now we're going to start putting everything together and place it on top of the base. We're going to start by folding each one of those egg pieces in half. If you have a bone folder handy, you can go ahead and use it to burnish the fold. I'm just using my Cricut Extra Large scraper. You want to make sure you have a nice, deep, even fold on each one of these egg cutouts. This is the point where you're going to discover whether or not you added enough adhesive between all of those layers. As you are folding the eggs, if you missed any of the pieces when you are adhering, you're going to start seeing them pop off or pop out. So go ahead and have a little bit of liquid adhesive set on the side just so you can make any repairs that are needed. To create our three-dimensional egg, we are going to glue all of the egg halves together. So I'm going to start out with the first two egg pieces. I'm going to glue those together. Then I'm going to add some liquid adhesive to another half of the egg. I'm going to glue those pieces together, and then I'm going to add my fourth egg piece, and now we have a three-dimensional egg that kind of has a cross shape at the top. To hold this egg onto the base, we are going to use a wooden skewer and a foam block. So I've cut down this wooden skewer and I've placed it up inside the egg, and I'm going to grab the foam block that I cut down and place it in the center of that cloche base. Before I adhere it in place, I want to add a little bit of decorative paper on the top so that that green foam doesn't show on my finished piece. I'm just going to trim down this scrap of Daisy Meadows paper, then use that liquid adhesive to adhere it to the top of the foam. The sides of the foam are going to be hidden by all of the flowers and leaves, but if you would like to cover them with ribbon or paper, you are welcome to do so. I've decided to stick the foam square down using a glue dot. Now later on I realized this was a really bad idea and I end up using hot glue. But I wanted to show you that the glue dot does not work very well to hold this in place. So make sure you use a really good adhesive to hold your block there so that it doesn't wobble as you're decorating it. Now we're going to take that egg that we placed on the wooden skewer and poke it right down in the center of that foam block. And I'm going to change the angle of the camera so that you can watch as I start to decorate this home decor piece with all of those Cricut cut images we created. When I first started creating this, I tried to use foam tape, and I realized that the items were not going to stay in place, especially if it was going to be moved from season to season, year to year. So I have drug out my hot glue gun. I'm sure you noticed this, but I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that I did add some ribbon to cover up that wooden skewer. I used some burlap ribbon, which is a retired item, but you can find it at just about any craft store, or you could use some twine or thread or whatever else you want to use to add a little bit of texture to this home decor piece. I'm going to admit that there were two things about this project that were a little bit difficult. First of all, this block is four-sided. So I had to make sure that the project created kind of a triangle around that four-sided base. So as you're putting this all together, you kind of do need to think in your head a triangle shape, not a square shape. Okay. The other thing that made this difficult for me was filming it. I'm really hoping that I got a good angle for you guys to see as I put this project together. This is the first time that I've had to come in close and not shoot from overhead. Here are a few more tips for you as you create your Easter egg cloche piece. Rotate it often. This kind of comes from my cake decorating days. I would rotate the cake multiple times just to make sure that all of the elements were evenly spaced. My second tip involves the hot glue gun. I told you guys that I was using the hot glue to adhere all these pieces onto the foam base. I have created a little puddle of glue over there on the right on my all-purpose mat. This makes it much easier to control the amount of glue that's going on to each one of these pieces. And that all-purpose mat is heat resistant, so the hot glue is not going to damage your mat for future use. Now, I did not use hot glue on the vellum pieces. Hot glue will damage the vellum and cause it to curl. I decided to use liquid glass instead. Vellum is one of my favorites to work with, and I always try to find a way to use it. I love the way it looks on this piece. It adds some nice dimension and texture. To finish off the inside of this piece, I have grabbed a little white pearl and I'm popping it right there on the top of the egg. Do you remember that scrapbook border we cut? This is going to be used on the outside of the cloche as a little decorative lace element. I discovered that the quickest way to adhere this to the glass was with glue dots. Now I ran out of micro glue dots before I started this project, so I'm just tearing apart a large glue dot and using it to adhere that lace in place. At the top of the cloche, I'm adding some jute twine. I'm just wrapping this around the top of the bell, tying a decorative bow, and then I'm going to trim the ends and add a little wooden button to the center of the bow that has been threaded with some jute twine. I used a glue dot to adhere this in place. Wow, that was a huge project, but the end result was so worth it. Take a look at this beautiful Easter egg cloche that we created using all of those Cricut cuts from the Daisy Meadow collection and all those fun little patterned papers. As I spin this, you can see the flowers that were created, those little vellum elements, the patterned leaves, and those leaves that were cut out of craft paper. And we have that adorable three-dimensional egg cut from the Daisy Meadow collection with that heat embossed polka dot background. I hope that this project inspired you to try a few new things with your Cricut machine and create a home decor piece for your home this Easter. This Easter egg cloche is the final project in our creative design team Easter Projects Video Collab. If you missed any of the projects this past week, you can click on any of the links in the description below. I have also placed a link to our creative design team playlist, so you can click on that and view any of our past creations. Don't forget to click that subscribe button so that you are notified when I add a new video to this channel. I hope you have a wonderful week. I can't wait to see what you create.